Warning, the Stone Age Gamer includes a lot of bad language. Cover your mother ears.
What is a man? A miserable little pile of secrets. But enough talk. How about you?
Good evening and welcome to episode 122 of the Stone Age Gamer podcast for the week of October 21st, 2016. I am Kris Randazzo, and with me as always is miserable little pile of secrets, Dan Ryan.
I was hoping that's what you were going to go with. I mean, it's a little on the nose.
There's so many to choose from.
There are, but that one's so good. It's so good. So good.
I couldn't not call you a miserable little pile of secrets.
I feel like an overexcited white girl right now. So good.
Castlevania is 30 years old, so as part of DK's 31 Days of Halloween, Dan and I are still spending the month doing a Castlevania retrospective series. But before we get to that, here is your weekly reminder that you can email us at mail@dk.com. Let us know what you think of our show, what topics you would like us to discuss in the future, or just say hello. We always want to hear from you, the listener. And a quick little announcement/warning for all of our listeners. On October 1st, my wife and I welcomed our daughter into the world. Her name is Ellie, she has a pair of lungs, and she loves to use them to scream like a maniac right around this time every night. We're still finding our rhythm as a family, but if you hear a screaming baby in the background, you have officially been warned. But we're going to do our best to not let that interfere with the show. So, if you are just joining us for this retrospective series, we've broken the Castlevania franchise into 5 categories that we are covering in 4 weeks. There's classic style, 16-bit style, Metroidvania style, 3D style, and the weird shit. Tonight, we're going to be tackling the Metroidvania style, and that covers the PS1 classic Symphony of the Night and the Game Boy Advance and Nintendo DS trilogies. So, let's get started with the biggest bang of them all, Castlevania Symphony of the Night. Released on PlayStation on July 20th, 1997 in Japan, October 2nd, 1997 in the US, and on the Sega Saturn on June 25th, 1998. And then later in Castlevania Dracula X Chronicles on PSP. I don't remember when. Dan.
Doesn't matter.
Talk to me. Fill my ears with wonderful sounds of you talking about Castlevania Symphony of the Night.
What a hunk of shit this game is. Just, God, I don't understand why people fucking like this pile of hot Trumpster fire garbage. Just, ugh. Next. No, fucking, dude, Symphony of the Night, man. Aside, horrible fucking voice acting aside.
Like, just, it's essentially just the word ham written on screen.
I mean, like, I imagine that it was recorded the first time and they were like, that was pretty good, but could you do it worse? And like somebody, he recorded it again. And they were like, all right, no, it sounds like you're trying. Could you make this awful? You know how like Barry sounds in Resident Evil? Like worse than that. Fucking worse, dude.
It's seriously, it sounds almost like it's intentional. I think that's why it's so endearing. Like,
right. Because
the guy who voices Alucard, he has such an awesome voice. There's no way that this... I'm flabbergasted every time I...
The mind literally boggles.
Or to quote Kelly Bundy, the mind wobbles.
The mind wobbles at the voice acting. But once you get past that first little intro scene, you are treated to just perhaps the most interesting castle design that there has ever been in a Castlevania game.
Mm-hmm. I would agree with that.
And not to mention the fact that once you beat the game, you then go through the castle upside down. Like,
and it still fucking works.
And it still works. Like, it's fascinating. The attention to detail to make a level work upside down and right side up is, I mean, it's staggering. But where Castlevania was before this, being the side-scrolling action-adventure game, and where they really made, I mean, this is the birth of the Metroidvania style of game, where there are areas of Dracula's castle that are locked off. You have to go acquire new abilities to be able to come back and reach them, and they did such a good job, very similarly to Super Metroid, of showing you just enough of, there's a thing over there. It's a shiny thing. Look, isn't it fucking pretty? You know you want to get over there, but you can't yet. And that those carrots that they laid throughout the game are so perfectly placed, and it just kept you fucking wrapped. Your attention was absolutely engaged the entire time, the entire story. It is a fucking masterpiece of game design.
It really, really is. And there's a couple other factors. I mean, besides just it being mechanically remarkably sound and gorgeous to look at, you also have the music, which was... This was the first time. I mean, all right, not the first time, because Rondo of Blood had a pretty amazing soundtrack, but this was next level shit right here.
It really was.
The Symphony of the Night soundtrack is really, really something extraordinary. But more than that, you had so many great ties to the past. Like, first off, you're Alucard. So from what is arguably a fan favorite from any Castlevania game in the retro era is, Castlevania 3 Dracula's Curse. Absolutely. This is where Alucard comes from. You are a completely reinvented version of Alucard, and who has to be one of the most well-drawn and animated sprites I have ever seen.
Oh, he is gorgeous.
Everything Alucard does is out of this world. And this was a 2D game where the rest of everybody else was making the 3D polygonal stuff. Everybody else was making these hideous, chunky polygons prancing around all over the place, and Konami was just like, hand-drawn animation, and we're gonna throw in some really neat special effects because it's the PlayStation on top of that. I mean, the first time I fell down that waterfall,
my goodness,
it's going so fast, you get to the bottom and the steam slowly catches up to the screen, and you're just like, holy shit, this is gorgeous. Every single thing, every creature in the game had a different over-the-top death animation.
Yep.
There were all these little factors that really played into it. And you could argue that Castlevania flirted with this type of gameplay, and even, Simon's Quest for NES. There's backtracking and that kind of open world thing. But where it really hits the Metroid-ness of it is what you said, how it left you these carrots, whereas the older games, like even if you're looking at the MSX version of Castlevania, where there was some exploration and key finding, there wasn't stuff like, I always think back to the first screen in Blaster Master, where you've got that that ledge that's right on top of the screen that is completely innocuous, but it always drove me nuts. It's like, I want to get up there. I want to know what is up there. And eventually the game gives you the ability to do that.
Yeah.
And Symphony of the Night is like, you see the wolf logo floating there in an orb, and it's behind a fence. I'm like, all right, I'm getting in there.
I need that. I need that in my life.
I don't know what it is. It's got a dog head on it. I like dogs. Let's do this.
Who doesn't fucking like dogs? I mean, come on now.
And you also had the other nods to it, like that bit later in the game where you actually fight Grant, Trevor, and Sifa, like the fake versions of them, and they just look incredible. And when Alucard is talking to Maria and she mentions Belmont, and he has a little thought bubble that appears over his head, and it's the 8-bit sprite of frickin' Trevor, because that's how Alucard remembers Trevor, is looking like an NES sprite,
which is awesome.
It is. This game just never stops impressing me. And when the PlayStation 1 was the first non-Nintendo system that I bought. I was such a diehard Nintendo guy. I refused to get anything else. But during the N64 and PlayStation era, Castlevania was one of my big names. Like, I was heartbroken that I couldn't play Bloodlines because I didn't have a Genesis. But when Symphony of the Night came out on PlayStation and Final Fantasy VII came out on PlayStation, I was like, I have to get myself a PlayStation. I remember walking into my local electronics boutique, and I was like, I'm getting a Sony PlayStation, and I can afford to get one game with it. And I asked the guy behind the counter, his name was Russ, I think. Yes. I'm pretty sure it was Russ. And I said, what should I get, Final Fantasy VII or Castlevania Symphony of the Night? And he looked at me and was like, if you're asking about Castlevania Symphony of the Night, then you know that that's the game you need to get. And he was right. Not wrong at all. Symphony of the Night, I still don't love Final Fantasy VII. And as important as a game as that is, Symphony of the Night is one of the most flawless games. It's why it lands on those top 10 lists all the time, because it absolutely deserves the spot. It's gorgeous. It's wonderful. Well, I love it.
And what's so crazy about this game is that it did eventually make the PlayStation Greatest Hits line, but it took some strong word of mouth to get it to that point, because what you just said really was the uphill battle that this game was facing of, N64 and coming from, or just coming from Nintendo, coming over to the PlayStation system, being a 2D game, when as ugly as fucking Crash Bandicoot and Spyro and all of the 3D games looked at Blasto and shit, as all of these games look now, back then, the first time we saw Jet Moto or Cool Borders, we were blown away.
Yeah, games had to be 3D back then.
They had to be.
It was just, that was where the industry was. You had to make your games 3D. And I got to respect the cojones on Konami at the time to stick with the 2D formula for this game, because it turned out amazing because of it.
It really did. But when this game was released, it was released to fucking meh.
Yeah,
nobody cared when this game came out.
The press loved the game. It reviewed really well, but it took a lot of word of mouth to get it to sell, because it was just not what gamers were looking for at the time, and a lot of people didn't realize that it was so good.
It wasn't Final Fantasy VII.
Nah, exactly.
I mean, that game. I don't think we can communicate for people who weren't involved in either the buying of the games or working in game stores during that time period when Final Fantasy VII was coming out. It was a juggernaut of a movement that I don't think we have ever seen again. And I don't think we ever will. Like, even as big as Halo was when Halo came out and was selling original Xboxes left and right, I still don't think that touched Final Fantasy VII.
No.
And just the hysteria that was around that title.
Final Fantasy VII was almost like Wii Sports. Final Fantasy VII was the kind of thing that everybody saw and said, wow. Like, even non-gamers would look at that and be like, wow. Even if they didn't want to play it. It was that level of hysteria. Like, how everybody wanted to play Wii Sports. That's what it was like, just wanting to see Final Fantasy VII. It was an extraordinary experience. And
Castlevania had to fight and fight and fight. And those of us who love this game had to fight for this title to really just become a thing. And that's why, I mean, if you look at the prices of this game, if you find a greatest hits version of the game, which is relatively easy to find, the game is relatively affordable. But to find a copy of Symphony of the Night without that green greatest hits logo on it is much more expensive, because they were just so much more rare.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's just that first fucking time, it still gets me. That first time that you realize you've only played half the game when you beat Dracula.
Where in Clock Tower? Getting those two rings, there were rings, right? There were two rings or something that you would wear.
Yeah.
And you had to get the two different ones. The one is wear clock and the other one's in tower. And you put them both together and it says wear in clock tower. You equip both of those items in the clock tower. Secret passage opens up. You discover the Dark Priest shaft is controlling what you thought was the last boss battle of the game against Richter. You kill that thing. Richter wakes up. A whole other game opens up for you. God
Beautiful.
Damn, that was a piece of genius right there. And here's another thing that's really interesting about this game, that I just want to mention before I forget it, is that first off, the American version had two fewer what are they, familiar characters?
Yeah.
There were 2 familiars cut out of the American version. No idea why.
They were too sexy.
I guess.
We just couldn't handle their heat.
We just couldn't handle that hotness.
No, we couldn't.
And then there was the Saturn version of the game that had 2 extra areas in it, complete with new enemies and new bosses, which, as far as I know, the Saturn version hasn't really been ported to anything. I'm surprised that when they did eventually release this game on stuff like PlayStation Network, or even the version that was unlockable in Dracula Chronicles X, was that they've never made like an ultimate version of Symphony of the Night that has all the Saturn content,
right,
and the extra familiars in it, all rolled up into one. Like, because the Saturn game has those extra areas, and that's really cool. But the Saturn version was not optimized at all for Saturn, so like the transparency effects are missing. The game has terrible loading times,
right?
Like, but the Saturn version had Richter, Maria, and Alucard selectable at the start.
Right, from the very, very beginning.
It's was such a strange thing that had all these extra things going for it and all these other things holding it back. And the fact that this game is so legendary, and the fact that Konami loves to make money on repackaging shit and not putting a lot of effort into it, how have they not just made a remastered complete version of, like, look at all the Metal Gear Complete collections and all that stuff. How have they not made a complete Symphony of the Night version? I still scratch my head about that.
Maybe they will when they get their collective heads out of their collective asses and stop making fucking pachinko machines. Perhaps
that would be nice.
Perhaps we will get, but probably not.
All right, so let's follow this guy up with it's a difficult game to follow up, but they did with Circle of the Moon, the launch title for Game Boy Advance. The fact that they were making a sequel-ish to Symphony of the Night that promised to play like Symphony of the Night on a goddamn handheld had me just freaking out at the time. Came out Game Boy Advance on March 21st, 2001 in Japan, June 11th in 2001 in the US. And with the exception of the fact that the screen was so
that you can't see it.
You just can't see it because the game is pretty dark and the screen in the Game Boy Advance is pretty dark.
Yeah.
This game was everything I could have wanted it to be.
Oh, it's fabulous.
It really is.
It is the game that, for me, sold the Game Boy player, because I was like, all right, I've played this game on my Game Boy Advance, and I can't see it, and I have the little light that clips onto the top, but that sucks. And I don't think, and perhaps I'm incorrect here, maybe I just didn't have the money at that time, but I don't think the SP had come out before the Game Boy player.
I don't think so. I could, yeah, I think you're right.
Because I think I would have just gotten an SP as opposed to the... So it was like, all right, fucking Circle of the Moon is a dope-ass game, and I really want to appreciate it. I need to get a Game Boy player so I can play my Game Boy Advance games on my television. And playing that game on the TV is just such a wonderful experience.
It is, particularly the Wii U Virtual Console version is stunning. It's pixel. You put it in pixel perfect mode, it blows up great. It's gorgeous.
It's they somehow managed to take what everybody loved about Symphony of the Night and make it work in a portable space, which they should not have been able to do.
No, I mean, as portable Castlevanias go, the leap forward from the previous portable Castlevania, which was Castlevania Legends, to this was wow. Just absolutely incredible.
It's night and day. It's night and fucking day.
Yeah, this was a huge, huge step forward. And it's still a very playable game today. I know
oh, absolutely.
Our previous co-host Dean just did a playthrough of it where he was complaining about how hard it was.
It's a hard game. It is a hard game, especially if you are not versed in Castlevania.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, because there was a while there where a Castlevania game seemed to be releasing once a year around the holidays. You know, you had Circle of the Moon, and then, well, the rest of them that we're going to talk about, it was once a year or every other year, it seemed.
No, it was, you're absolutely right. Circle of the Moon was 01, Harmony of Dissonance was 02, Aria of Sorrow was 03. Then we had to skip a year because of the DS, but then they did 5, 6, and 8. So, yeah, it was almost every year.
You know, so once you kind of got into this mode, it just, oh God, it was one of my favorite things. And, like, Tiff will often joke about, you know, the fact that when we first kind of got together, there was the yearly Castlevania at Christmas, and like, yay, we're together and we're in love and we're gonna have the holidays, and fuck, you're playing Castlevania again because you got it for Christmas. That's awesome.
You got it.
So
There's a new Castlevania.
I just won't talk to you for a week and a half. I was like, well, fuck, it's fucking Castlevania, man. But I mean, this game really did an excellent job of, you know, like I said, of taking what was great about Symphony of the Night and shrinking it to the point where it would work on a vastly underpowered compared to the PlayStation system, but still making it look gorgeous and play gorgeous, and the control was great. And I think that may be the thing that I'm most thankful for with Igarashi being at the helm of Castlevania for so long, is that he made the game so much more playable.
Yeah, they were all they controlled very tightly, very well.
This game, I love this game. It is the one that I've gone back to the least of the Game Boy Advance and DS ones.
Really, for me, it's Harmony.
Really,
yeah.
I don't know, this one. And maybe it's because Nathan Graves is not a Belmont. And I know not all the rest of them are Belmonts either, but this was like the first, like, not Belmont. And I was like, yeah.
Well, I mean, he wasn't the first non-Belmont.
Well,
it was Jonathan Morris in
I suppose you're
Bloodlines.
Right.
But
see, I get the timelines all fucking confused, but it is really, really damn good. And this
Igarashi didn't do this one, though.
Are you sure?
I just looked it up to double check. Yeah, I was pretty sure that was the case, that Igarashi wasn't involved in this one. And yeah, he's the producers were Shigeru Umezaki.
I'm looking at it now.
Yeah.
Well, it was still his team though.
Yeah, I think there was definitely some crossover there.
Okay.
With the Symphony of the Night folks.
This is very much an Igarashi style game.
Yes, it is very, very much made in that vein. Like, this was made to follow up Symphony of the Night. There's no question about it.
Yeah, it's, I don't know. Like I said, I've gone back to this one the least, but I think one of the things that I think this game did maybe better than the rest of them was give you the power-ups at exactly the right time. Mm-hmm. Exactly, because it was a portable game, they had to nail that feeling of, you know, people are going to play this in spurts, so we're going to give you, you know, the power-ups had to be very specifically placed. You know, the average player is going to get from here to here in 15 minutes or in a 20-minute session or whatever. So
yeah,
there was always something.
The forward progression very carefully, and they did an excellent job at doing that.
There was always something to be working towards.
Yeah.
It's a fucking great game. It's a fucking great game.
It really is, really well worth the play. Then the following year, they also introduced the DSS system, dual something, whatever, with the cards. That was pretty neat.
The cards was cool.
Yeah, that was fun messing with all those different effects and whatnot. The animations and sound obviously weren't up to the scratch of Symphony of the Night because it was a Game Boy Advance as opposed to PlayStation. But like you said, they really made it work within the limitations that they had. Technically speaking, the evolution of these 3 Game Boy Advance games is really, really interesting. The next one was Castlevania Harmony of Dissonance, again for the Game Boy Advance, released June 6, 2002 in Japan, September 16, 2002 in the United States. And what I thought was really interesting about this one, this was Igarashi jumping back into the series, and what he thought was lacking in Circle of the Moon was was in the visual department. Like, really big sprawling enemies and the overall brightness of the game, because that was a big issue in Circle of the Moon with the Game Boy Advance screen. So they actually sacrificed the sound, like the musical fidelity to allow more memory to the visuals in the game, which was really a technically interesting way of approaching the game. And as a result, Harmony of Dissonance is a pretty damn good looking GBA game.
I think this one is gorgeous.
It is. It probably has some of the weakest music in the series, which is kind of a shame. But I remember this is the one that I've gone back to the least, just because Circle the Moon I've gone back to more often, because Circle the Moon, the time I played through it from beginning, middle, and end was all on original Game Boy Advance. So I like looking at this game through different perspectives. So getting to play through it on like Wii U Virtual Console, for example, is a really, really fun experience, because I remember squinting at that screen so much and watching, like looking at all of the actual artwork is really interesting. Harmony of Dissonance was so much fun because of the dashing. You could be so fast in this game. Just Belmont or Just or whatever the hell, however you pronounce his name, you would just tap the shoulder buttons and you would dash in either direction, and you could just blast through this game, and it was so much fun to play.
It is fucking fun. Like this one, I think, had a lot of really cool like abilities. And I mean, they're traditional abilities, you know, like double jumps and all that shit. But the dashing through and the way that you could incorporate that into your strategies for combat, I thought was a really interesting and fun way to play the game.
Yes, definitely.
You know, dashing around, because that, I mean, going back to Symphony of the Night, that little the dodge back was such a huge, like, oh my god, you know, that it just opened up so much more in terms of strategizing for, you know, using strategery for fucking fighting bosses and whatnot. Adding this dash move in with all the other powers was like, oh fuck, this is just a fun way to play through here and just blast through all this, you know, like you said, blast through the levels, fucking run. It was just goddamn fun.
And there's something innately awesome about doing that as a Belmont, because you've never been able to do that before as a Belmont. Like, you played as Alucard and you were just like, Jesus, the mobility of this guy is out of control. Like, this is so much faster than anything else. And then you played as Nathan Graves in Circle the Moon, and he was a lot slower than Alucard, and you had to do like double tap to dash and whatnot. But like you said, he still wasn't a Belmont. Right. You get just Belmont there, and you know, he looks kind of like a Richter but in red, and he just looks cool. And you're running around doing all this Alucard type shit, except you've got a whip, and it was great. The game felt so good to play.
It was fucking cool. I love the character design in here. I love the art design in this game.
Yeah, the art direction was great.
I particularly love the spell casting in this game. It's fucking cool. Like, the effects are really cool on the screen. And I hadn't realized that they did that with the music. I mean, I suppose thinking about it now, this is probably the least memorable musically as far as the games are concerned, but it does look stunning.
Yeah, it's really, visually it's very impressive. And yeah, if you go back and listen to the music in this, you'll notice that it's a lot more chiptune sounding than Circle of the Moon and Aria of Sorrow, because they sacrificed that stuff for the visuals. But the follow-up to this game somehow managed to be just as visually impressive whilst getting the music back on track. Aria of Sorrow. Holy crap, was this game amazing. Aria of Sorrow, released on the Game Boy Advance, May 6, 2003 in the United States, then May 8th, 2003 in Japan, so a few days earlier in the US. This game had me almost nervous for a minute, because they said it took place in the future. And I was like, what?
Yeah.
You play as Soma Cruz, who's like a reincarnation of Dracula. And then I was like, okay, that's actually kind of a cool concept, because you get to roll around Castlevania gaining Dracula-esque powers, just like amazing, innate magical powers. And it's ridiculous. The kinds of, there's a point in this game. I can't remember if it's this one or it's sequel, but there's a point in the game where one of the spells you get was you just throw cats at people. It just puts out his arm and a cat just goes.
I don't remember which one it was, but the cat spell is fucking dope. It's just, I'm gonna throw a
What
cat
more
at
do
this
you
person.
need besides that to know that this is one of the most amazing games? And honestly, this game was completely and totally amazing to me until the sequel came out, and
Right.
I didn't stop crapping my pants for like a month. But not to take away from Aria of Sorrow, like we'll talk about Dawn in a minute, but
Yeah.
Aria of Sorrow was just wow. It was everything that they had done right with these games before had now all been rolled up into a ball, and here you go. This is your ultimate culmination. This is the best that the Game Boy Advance can do.
Mm-hmm.
And blah, blah, so tasty.
I fucking loved the changing of the weapons in this game because you could get some ridiculous shit.
Like giant swords,
Giant
like mode
swords
7 their way all around your body.
Fucking awesome. Like, here's this little effeminate looking dude running around being a badass, and out of nowhere whips just fucking Siegfried's sword from Soul Calibur.
Yeah.
What the fuck is that?
And this was a year before Metroid Zero Mission.
Yeah.
Like, we got this and then Zero Mission in like a short span of time. Like, just think about the Game Boy Advance library of this type of game, of Metroidvanias. We got three killer Castlevanias and 2 killer Metroids on the Game Boy Advance. If you like this kind of game, the Game Boy Advance you should have one dangling around your neck at all times.
Game Boy Advance is my favorite system of all time.
Oh gosh.
It really
It's
is.
just-
Because shit like this and fucking Advance Wars, what more do you need?
Super
I-
Dodgeball Advance.
Oh God, fucking
There,
right.
there are so many good games on the
we
GBA.
we will do it. When's
Yes.
the GBA anniversary? Because we need a GBA fucking episode.
Yeah, we'll do one of those one of these days. Because yeah, the GBA is just a seriously ridiculous system.
Phenomenal system.
There were so many good games, but Aria of Sorrow. I mean,
Any
doubts?
Again, the level design in this one was incredible. This one is pretty close, I think, to Symphony of the Night. The boss characters in this one were super cool. The big golem looking motherfucker that like you only got his torso and his head and his 2 fists as he tried to beat the shit out of you.
Yep,
That dude
yep.
was fucking cool. Like the art direction was great, the graphics were great,
the
all the
music
spells
is
were cool.
spectacular.
Like, oh, it was a gorgeous game. And then in this one, you get to be Julius at the end, right? If
Yes,
play
you
through,
unlock
you can-
Julius mode.
and Julius mode is fucking hard as shit,
Yeah, it is.
but so fun.
Because Julius is no just.
No, he is not. He is the average Belmont.
He's
just
very
a
Simon in his mannerisms.
But oh god, I fucking adore this game. I
Yeah, me
adore this
too.
game. I want my dream is to one day have the Castlevania HD collection released on my PlayStation so I can just play through them all again in glorious HD. I fucking love it. I love it.
Yeah,
It's
I would
so
love to
good.
see HD versions of. I mean, even just the games that we're talking about now. Like
Yeah.
even just do the Metroidvania style ones.
Yeah,
as a
that's all I
collection.
want.
Like, I mean, to be fair, I would also love to see all the other ones done that way, not the
sure.
3D ones. Well, next week's going to be a fun show, but replaying the original, like, come on, how great would it be to have like a proper, easy to understand remake of Simon's Quest? You know what I
Right.
mean? Like, that would just be awesome.
It's not
But
asking for much.
to get these guys in HD, that would just be thrilling. I mean, all 3 of them are available on the Wii U Virtual Console. If you have access to a Wii U and you haven't played these games, or even if you have, Nintendo did a phenomenal job of creating a Game Boy Advance emulator on the Wii U. You have a couple of different display options. Obviously, for my money, Pixel Perfect mode is just gorgeous. I played through both of the Metroid games on this service, and I can't even imagine playing them any other way anymore. They just look so good. The art direction is so good. The giant pixels don't even bother me a little. And these Castlevania games are the same way. They look great. I can't say that enough. So we're going to take ourselves a quick break. When we come back, we're going to move on to the last 3 Metroidvania-style games, the Nintendo DS trilogy. You are listening to the Stone Age Gamer podcast from Geekade.com, so stick around. And now, here's a look at some of the other original content available right now at Geekade.com. Geekade's 31 Days of Halloween has been having fun with Geekade's Scariest Moments, wherein different staff members describe the thing, be it a movie, TV show, video game, book, or what have you, that has scared them the most. This week's episode's Karen Randazzo got in on the fun by talking about her early screening experience with a legendary horror movie. Check out Geekade's Scariest Moments, The Blair Witch Project.
I had to get up and leave the theater during that movie because I fucking messing with my head too much.
I just didn't see it. I'm a giant wuss. It's like, no, I'm not watching that.
The shaky cam on a giant screen, I was like, I'm gonna throw up. I'm gonna fucking step outside for a sec. Hold on. It was a good movie though. Anyway, so Geekade's Twilight Zone podcast has returned for season 2. Brandon Cruz of Apathetic Enthusiasm fame is back. It is Cruz, right?
Yeah, I just spelled that terribly wrong.
Okay, because that's not how you spell. Anyway.
I wrote Brandon Cruss. Sorry,
that's
Brandon.
What I almost said. Brandon Cruss of the Apathetic Enthusiasm fame is back every Sunday to bring you his episode-by-episode podcast about one of the most influential TV series of all time. Join Brandon and guest Dr. Steve Gronard Ellerhoff for Submitted for Your Approval Season 2, Episode 1, King 9 Will Not Return. They didn't bury the lead of that one, did they?
No.
Will King 9 return? Oh, it says so right in the title he won't.
He ain't coming back. No way.
I bet you he does. It's a twist.
My YouTube series, Into the Vault, gets in on the 31 Days of Halloween fun with an episode all about some strange things related to the Resident Evil franchise. Because what's better at getting you in the mood to kill zombies than a tiny toolkit and a burlap sack? Don't miss Into the Vault Resident Evil pre-orders.
I remember those. Those were terrible.
I still have them, and I did most of the episode with the burlap sack on my head. So if you want to watch me talk about a tiny toolkit while wearing a burlap sack, head over to the Geekade YouTube channel. We got you covered.
I believe I have just the video you were looking for. I didn't know you had such a specific request I could fill, but here it is. Jesus Christ. Do you have the chainsaw controller, by the way?
Oh, God, no. I never spent the money on that.
Oh, my goodness.
Like, I kept looking at it, and it was like a baby chainsaw, you know?
It's so dumb. I'm kind of sad that, no one I know has it, though.
It's like 6-inch chainsaw. It's huge, but the actual chainsaw blade of it was so tiny, it just looked weird. And I'm like, where the hell am I going to put this thing? If I'm buying anything this stupid, I'm buying Steel Battalion.
Right? Fuck, we should have stolen it from fucking Game Crazy.
Yeah. Wouldn't have made a difference in the long run.
No, it wouldn't have.
Rest in peace, Game Crazy.
Yeah. Finally, because you didn't write that, but I'm going to say it anyway because I'm used to it now. What happens when one of Geekade's entertainment writers teams up with their sports writers? You get an article about baseball movies. Chip Garrison and Dave DiOrio each made their own starting lineup teams comprised entirely of baseball movies, and the resulting lists are quite something. Head over to the think tank and check out a fantasy lineup of baseball films to watch in October.
You can catch all this great stuff, plus tons of other articles, videos, podcasts, and more right now at Geekade.com.
Just as an aside, I haven't read that article yet, but if A League of Their Own is not number 1 on both lists, they're both incorrect.
And we're back. We just found out over the break the NX is going to be pseudo-revealed tomorrow at 10 o'clock in the morning, which is yesterday.
And by tomorrow, we mean yesterday morning.
Yes. Tomorrow for us, so in a few short hours. Finally. But anyway, let's rein it back in. And by let's, I'm talking to myself here, because I'm the only one. Dan's just like, I'll be playing Puzzle and Dragons. Evan's sitting over there in the corner going like, what the fuck's an NX? Reeling it back in.
Reel yourself back in. And let's talk about how they managed to take what we all thought, like we all made fun of the DS originally. We were like, what, are they just going to put a fucking map on the screen? But they made it fucking work.
That was actually really funny, because they said, what, are they going to put a map on the other side of the screen? I said, that would be great for Castlevania.
Yeah, that would be fucking awesome, actually.
And it was the best thing ever for Castlevania.
It really was. I hate fucking playing Castlevania games without the goddamn map now.
Like I'm playing Symphony of the Night and pressing select every 14 seconds. It's like,
yeah.
All right. No, it's just always there. I'm fine with dedicating an entire screen to nothing but that.
Anyway, so Dawn of Sorrow.
Yeah. Holy crap.
Yeah.
Aria of Sorrow. Yeah. That was like knocked it out of the park. Dawn of Sorrow put it on par with Symphony. Dawn of Sorrow is so high up there in my rankings of Castlevania games, like especially the fact that when you beat it and you officially find out that Genya Arikado is actually Alucard in disguise, and then you can play through Dawn of Sorrow as Alucard with the friggin' Alucard sprite from Symphony of the Night, complete with the awesome trails behind him.
Yep.
Holy crap baskets. This game was amazing. Unbelievably amazing.
Now, I think I may have misspoke earlier when I said the big fucking giant golem-looking dude. I think he was in this one.
Was he? See,
I can almost
picture him.
Because
I can almost picture him in the Game Boy Advance one, but it's hard to think of that, because this is weird, because Dawn of Sorrow is a direct sequel to Aria of Sorrow, which is not something that these games had done they'd done at all, really.
Right, they don't do that.
Yeah, Portrait of, what is it, Circle of the Moon, Harmony of Dissonance, and Aria of Sorrow had nothing to do with each other aside from just being games in the Castlevania franchise. And now that I'm looking at screenshots, I think you're right. I think the big golem dude was in this one. This one had the giant skeleton that was crawling.
Yeah, that one was
the giant skeleton waving the big-ass bone at you. Now I'm looking up Dawn of Sorrow. I bet this thing is going to come up first thing. That giant hideous ass golem thing.
Probably.
And this had all the sprites from Symphony of the Night reprised in it. Oh my god. Oh, that freakish giant monster that looked like his skin was falling off of his face and his ass.
That was fucking dope.
There's that giant golem thing. Yeah, that was this one.
It was this one.
Yeah.
What I loved about this game, I really, really loved the magic seal system.
That was a very clever use of the touchscreen. I know it got a lot of flack and still does. I still think it's neat. I just think it's neat.
I understand why it got the flack that it did, because the tracking of it was not necessarily as accurate as it should have been. For those of you who don't know what we're talking about, when you would fight a boss character and you would get the boss down to 0 health, a 5-pointed circle would appear on the screen. So you'd have the circle and it would have 5 points. Or was it? No, 3. 3 points?
No, I think it was 5, because it was like a star. You could essentially draw a star with it.
So you could essentially, if the game would then display a pattern that you had to trace, and if you didn't trace the pattern with your stylus in enough time, the boss would regain some health. And I just thought that was such a cool, like, immersive tactic that they used to get you even more involved in the game of, like, not only are you fighting this monster and having to beat it, but you have to magically seal it away, which sounds fucking corny, but I thought it was a really cool addition to the game. And they came up with, like, some really cool patterns, and it increased the intensity of the boss fights that much more, because it's like, fuck, this guy's kicking my ass. Oh, I got him down. I got him. Oh, fuck, I beat him. Oh, shit, I got to draw the thing. God damn it.
Gotta get the stylus in my hand. Where the fuck's the stylus?
Like, it it just ramped up the fucking excitement level. I thought it was really cool. And it did catch a lot of shit. I don't understand. People don't like fun. Must be what it is.
Must be. So yeah, this game really, I mean, this really just took everything that was great about Aria of Sorrow and brought it up to damn near Symphony of the Night levels. Is the sound, the visuals, it just took everything to the next level. And this, I don't even know what else to say about it other than just, holy crap, I love this game. It's so good. All the different characters, the descendants of the Yoko Belnades, descendant of Sifa Belnades, and geez, there's just so much good to talk about in this game.
There really is.
Unlockables when you're done. How crazy the giant face marionette boss thing with the forearms coming out of his ears or whatever the hell.
The character design was super duper interesting in this, and the soul system was so cool.
It was great.
Like absorbing the souls of the enemies, and those souls like powering up the ones that you had already collected, because you could collect multiple copies of the same one. So you were just kind of the RPG elements that were added in Symphony of the Night that were then expanded upon throughout the rest of the series really made the game so much more than what it was. And giving this type of system in here where you could continuously power stuff up, and that would then in turn unlock new abilities as you played through the game, made the, sometimes, to be honest, as much as we love these games, there is a certain amount of tedium involved of backtracking to like, oh fuck, I gotta go all the way over here, or shit, now I realize the thing that I had to do was at the other end of this fucking castle, so gotta get fuck other side of the goddamn so like the tedium that is involved sometimes in Metroidvania style games was somewhat eliminated by the fact that even though you're continuously killing these same characters, there is a point to it. Like there is some sort of benefit to doing this other than grinding levels, which, let's be honest, isn't fun in any game. There's no game where you're like, well, I gotta grind.
Yes,
great.
I'm so stoked about that.
So excited to grind up another. Oh God, I need how many? I'm 6 million experience points away. Fucking suck a dick. God damn it! Like it's the worst. But at least here there was a benefit to it.
Yeah.
So it was fucking smart. Like I didn't feel so bad about it. I still didn't like it, but I felt better. Oh, it's such a beautiful game.
Yeah.
It looks great.
Go play it. Go play
really,
it.
for real. I mean, Aria of Sorrow, Dawn of Sorrow, like, it's just so goddamn good. They're almost gaming perfection. I mean, they really are, which is a bold statement to make, but there's nothing in these games that I can think of, unlike some of the other ones. Like the last two that we're going to talk about, I don't feel the same way about. I personally love them, but
as do I. But they're definitely. And you know what? That's a good segue to move on to the next one. Is we'll talk about Portrait of Ruin, which I would say is probably my least favorite of all of these. And that's not saying that I dislike it by any stretch of the imagination.
Right.
It is an excellent and interesting game. Lots of callbacks to Castlevania Bloodlines. Portrait of Ruin released on the DS November 16th, 2006, December 5th, 2006 in the US. I forgot to mention the dates on Dawn of Sorrow. It was August 25th, 2005 in Japan, October 4th, 2005 in the U.S. So this was it was a year later, and Iga was trying different things. There was the frequency with which these games were coming out and how high quality they were is really something to behold. It's really, really remarkable. But he kept wanting to try to reinvent it a little bit. And you'll notice that these games, the first chunks of them adhered really strictly to the Symphony of the Night formula up through Dawn of Sorrow. And then Portrait of Ruin kind of moved off a little bit in that Portrait of Ruin, you wound up going to places outside of Castlevania. You go through these different paintings and go to all these different areas like in Egypt and shit. And
the Egypt level was so fucking cool, though.
They were all really cool and really interesting, and I can't really put my finger on what it was about Portrait of Ruin that rubbed me the wrong way. That maybe it was franchise fatigue at this point. Like, I still played the crap out of it. I don't think I ever actually finished this one.
This one's very hard.
It is very difficult.
Like, this one I feel is possibly the most unbalanced of them, and it is definitely the one of the GBA DS era games that I like the art direction the least.
Yeah, this was very into the bright anime style,
which I am not a fan of.
I don't dislike it, but it works, but it's not Aria of Sorrow. You know what I mean?
Right. Like if you look at the character design, especially of the main characters, of the main protagonists of the series, there is a certain ethereal quality that they all have. And there's a level of androgyny to it. It's a very stylistic approach to the character design. And this one is a dude. Like, he is very much an anime dude. You know, he looks a little he's got kind of a Vash the Stampede quality to him.
Yeah.
But and I just described the last one as ethereal, which is a fucking hipster-ass way to describe something, and I realize that. But the character designs in Portrait of Ruin are almost a little softer than that. Like, there's something about it that I don't quite care for. And that takes me out of it a little bit.
Yeah, I totally see that. I found myself overlooking that a lot because I really loved the way that Castlevania played with the lineage of all the different characters and set itself in all these different time periods. And this one had a lot to do with Castlevania Bloodlines, whereas the main character of this one is Jonathan Morris, whose father was John Morris from Castlevania Bloodlines, and Charlotte Alden, I think is how you say it, who is an indirect descendant of the Belnades clan.
Mm-hmm.
A distant descendant, as they say on the Wikipedia page. And I believe that one of the characters actually in the game turned out to be Eric Lecard, which was the super cool spear-wielding character from Castlevania Bloodlines. So the fact that this one's storyline and world tied so heavily into Castlevania Bloodlines, which I always look at as an often overlooked Castlevania game because it's never been re-released on anything.
Right.
Those kinds of things really, really pumped me up. They really made me want to continue to play the game. And honestly, I think for me it must have just been franchise fatigue, because the more I think about it, the more I feel like I should just, after I finish playing Axiom Verge, I should just jump into these games again and finish off this and Order of Ecclesia, which are the two that I had never finished.
Right. And I think that's probably fair at that point, because we also have to keep in mind that by the time these games were coming out, not only was it franchise fatigue for Castlevania, but there's a certain amount, even as much as we love it, there's a certain amount of gaming fatigue that just sets in after a while. And when these games were coming out, we were working in video game stores. We were, basically consumed by this hobby. And even though now at this point we're doing podcasts and I probably play games more now than I ever have, I don't feel as consumed by them as I did then, if that makes sense. Just
an interesting perspective. I definitely play fewer games now than I did back when I was, say, in high school or something, when I didn't have friends or things.
Well, see, but I mean, what I find interesting about it is that, I play Puzzle and Dragons every day. I play for, not hours every day, but I put in a decent amount of time on that game every day. And when I get home from work, my kids are on their iPads. And when I got home from work today, Katie came up to me and she was stuck in a level I don't really understand Roblox. I understand Roblox less than I understood Minecraft at this point last year. but she was stuck in a part of Roblox. So as soon as I walked in the house, it was, Daddy, Daddy, come here. I need you to help me with this. So like as soon as I walk in the door, I'm playing another game. And then we came downstairs and we, for my birthday a couple weeks ago, which by the way, Karen really should have held out another day so me and Ellie could have shared a birthday. That would have been cool, but whatever. That's fine. Like, don't consult me about the birth of your child. Fucking whatever. Like, I don't count or some shit. But for my birthday a couple weeks ago, my kids got me with all their money. They don't fucking have jobs. They got me the A-Team expansion set for Lego Dimensions and the BMO and Lumpy Space Princess Adventure Time expansion pack.
Nice.
So we put those in there, and Katie came downstairs and she was playing with me, and Penny was sitting on the couch. She was playing. She was doing some Five Nights at Freddy dentist app that she downloaded, but it's still a game. It counts. And we're playing this, and I gave the controller to Katie, and she's running around the Wizard of Oz world as Lumpy Space Princess, and she's like doing quests and shit, and I'm checking Puzzle and Dragons at that time and looking back so like video games are a huge part of our lives now. But even so, I still don't feel like as fatigued by it. I think because there's so many different little snippets of it. Whereas when this game was coming out, it was so fucking headstrong all the time about like it's PlayStation or it's Microsoft and you fucking did DS and like, I don't know. It just felt a lot more, I don't know, antagonistic to me back then. I don't really know where I'm going with this. I've gotten off on a rant and I'm not really sure.
It was definitely considerably prevalent. And I do play, now that I have a kid who's old enough to be interested in that kind of stuff, I do play a bit more. Like he always wants me to play the Link boat game, which is Wind Waker, which makes me really happy. He's been a little bit into Rhythm Heaven lately.
Oh, that's cool.
Every now and then he'll be like walking around the house going, bum, 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 2, 3, 4. Like, all right, let's play some Rhythm Heaven. And he also really likes Cobra Triangle for NES.
Nice.
Which makes me insanely happy. I load that up on my EverDrive with the Game Genie code so that I can actually beat it.
That's awesome.
Because that game is fucking impossible.
Yeah, no, you can't play that game without cheating.
I can get pretty far without the Game Genie, but like I've beaten the game a ton of times with the Game Genie, and I play it and like I can't even imagine how you would do this without infinite lives. I can't even wrap my head around the concept of it. But Castlevania.
Yeah, so getting back to it. I mean, I think there was probably a little bit of a franchise fatigue. And I think that kind of affected the last game we're going to talk about, too, because the last game we're going to talk about is the only one of these that I haven't finished. I think I finished Portrait of Ruin.
I definitely didn't finish this one, and this was more of a time constraint thing. Like, I fell off of it because I was distracted by other things in life, and I never got around to finishing it. And it made me sad because I liked this game's world so much. I really liked the protagonist. I thought Shinoa was a really cool character. And I also really liked the fact that she was a completely awesome, non-sexualized female lead.
Yeah, she's just a badass chick.
Yeah, she's just a badass chick with no personality because they stole it from her, which is kind of an interesting story. But we're talking about Castlevania Order of Ecclesia, released October 21st, 2008 in the U.S., October 23rd, 2008 in Japan. And it was... I don't remember exactly what time period it was set in. I can't remember if it was before or after Portrait of Ruin, but you play as this, like, ex-nun type woman who has like this seal thing in her back, and she can do all kinds of awesome stuff flying around. The thing that sticks out to me are two things in particular in this game when I think back on it now is, one, the animation in this was, I feel it was on par with Symphony, even more so than any of the previous handheld games. Shinoa animated so extraordinarily well. Like the bit where she lifts up her hair and you see the tattoo on her back, is just that the animations are stunning in there. And she just was a really, really well-designed character. This was also the return of the, I guess as you put it, ethereal art direction. This wasn't bright-colored anime stuff. It looked like paintings again, and it was really, really gorgeous. The other thing that sticks out in my mind is this, in this game, is the way that they handled the two hands for the equipment. Whereas you could do that in Symphony of the Night, but in Order of Ecclesia, when you equip 2 different items in 2 different hands, you could attack in really quick succession by switching hands. So you could equip 2 different knives, and you could do these really quick attacks just by switching hands back and forth. And it was such a fun battle system. God, I love Order of Ecclesia. I really want to go back and play through this one.
This one I have the least amount to say. This one I think just hit at a time where when did you say this came out? This
was 2008.
Yeah, 2008. So
there was a lot of other stuff going on in 2008, if I remember correctly.
My wife was pregnant at this time. You know, like there was not a lot of time for gaming at this point. Plus, I also believe most of my gaming time was taken up by Metal Gear Solid 4 in 2008.
Possibly. PS3 was 06, so...
Yeah, I think so. Just trying to think. I know I played it when I lived in Lakeland, Florida, which...
2008.
Was
June
fun.
12th, 2008 was Metal Gear Solid 4. This was October, so this was later in the year, but it's entirely possible that you had been playing Metal Gear that long.
I think I had been playing, and I'm trying to think of what else I was playing around that time. I think... Actually, you know, this is kind of silly, but I know exactly why I did not play this game. This was the time period with my wife being pregnant where we sat on the couch and we were watching Doctor Who and Torchwood.
Oh, yeah.
That is when we got into Doctor Who and Torchwood. So everything else kind of went away at that point because we were like, we're going to watch all of the British television. So we're going to watch Doctor Who and Torchwood and fucking Being Human and Life on Mars and fucking whatever else we can find, the Sarah Jane Chronicles and all this shit. And yeah, everything else kind of went away between that and fucking Metal Gear. Because I didn't get Metal Gear when it released because I was fucking broke at the time that it released, so I didn't get it till later in the year. Yeah, this is the one that I have the least experience with because of Doctor Who. So
that's fair.
Yeah, no, it's good. I feel fine with that.
I spent a good chunk of time with this game. I was really, really happy to have it exist, and looking back on it now, I'm sad that I didn't appreciate it more when it came out, because this was the last proper game we got that was part of the original Castlevania series. This was the last. I mean, you had the weird spin-off things like Puzzle of the Night and the Judgment. That weirdo but kind of Judgment. I can't even count Judgment because that game is too ugly. It's no way. No. Judgment we'll talk about next episode because that definitely fits in the weird shit category.
It most definitely does.
But this was the last proper, like, what was the name of that one? The Xbox Live Arcade one, where it had all the different characters from all the games together in one place.
Part of it, like that was weird.
That was it was cool, but it was a weird game.
I didn't play that one.
I played it for like 15 minutes online, and I was like, all right, this is neat, but I don't have time for this right now. But yeah, this was the last proper Castlevania game before Lords of Shadow changed everything up. And don't get me wrong, I appreciate Lords of Shadow quite a bit. I think that was a really neat thing for them to do with this franchise because they had done so many Castlevania games within this lineage, and Lords of Shadow was a really interesting way to shake things up. I'm sad that it eventually ended the other franchise. Like, they don't seem to be wanting to go back to that, and Lords of Shadow, I think, is also done at this point. But
because fuck Konami.
Because Konami hates you.
That's right.
As we all know, they hate us personally, every single one of us. But yeah, it's another game that's extremely well worth playing. I don't remember if this was all three of the DS games wound up on Wii U Virtual Console yet. I know because DS games are on Wii U for some reason, which is a very strange situation. No. Yeah, just Nintendo DS. No, this one hasn't wound up on the Virtual Console yet.
Well, boo hiss.
Boo hiss to that indeed, because I would really like to play through this on the TV. Like, I haven't done any of the DS Virtual Console releases yet, just because that's a really strange thing to have. It considered Super Mario 64 DS on the Virtual Console just because.
Why not?
I'd be able to play it with an analog stick. I mean, I guess I could technically throw it in my 3DS, and that would kind of have the same effect, more or less. Weird stuff, but
no one likes Mario games. Order of Ecclesia. This is one that I will definitely go back to, because I have for my 3DS the Mirror of Fate, that I'm slowly working my way through because
that was the Lords of Shadow one, the 2D Lords of Shadow.
Yeah, and we'll talk about
that.
We'll get there.
Yeah, we'll get there.
So,
yeah. Anyway.
All right.
So
I like how we end the show on a kind of meh.
It's
a meh.
Damn good game. Obviously, I mean, it's not as legendary as it wasn't groundbreaking in the way that Dawn of Sorrow and Symphony of the Night and Circle of the Moon were. Like it was the end of it, and there's a lot of good to be had in Order of Ecclesia. There's a lot of character in Order of Ecclesia. It is a really, really neat game with a great protagonist, and I would love to see a sequel to Order of Ecclesia. I would love to see more of Shinoa as a character. But that's going to do it. That's our show. Tune in next week for the final part 4 of our Castlevania 4-part retrospective. Dan and I will be moving on to the rest of the business. That's the 3D games and the weird shit. I didn't really plan for the Lords of Shadow stuff to be a part of this because I almost feel like it's a different franchise. But maybe we'll hit on that a little bit. Who knows?
We'll touch.
Who knows what next
little
week holds, right?
Of the Lords of Shadow.
You never know. Maybe there will be a new Castlevania game announced for NX tomorrow. I'm so freaking excited. Once again, you can get in touch with us at mail@geekade.com, as well as all flavors of social media that we inhabit. You can like us on Facebook, find us on Instagram at Geekade, subscribe to our YouTube and Twitch channels for all our latest and greatest video content, and follow us on Twitter at _Geekade. You can also find us individually on Twitter. I'm at Geekade Kris, that's Geekade Kris, and Dan is at
Geekade Dan.
If you're interested in listening to me swallow my spit, if you're interested in more information about anything we discussed tonight, be sure to check out our show notes. And while you're at it, you can also subscribe to this and any of our other wonderful podcasts on iTunes or Stitcher. Or if you're super duper nice, you can leave us a super duper review because any and all feedback is super and duper. We'd also like to thank Mark TDK Knight for our show's theme. You can check him out on SoundCloud, Bandcamp, or his website, which we will have a link to in the show notes. Again, always remember to keep your eyes on Geekade.com, where we post something new every stinking day. Thank you again for listening. On behalf of Dan, myself, and our invisible and silent protagonist producer, Evan, keep playing games.
Castlevania.
Castlevania.